Hey everyone, I'm here in Milan at Codemotion, and tomorrow I will deliver a session about GitHub Copilot. It will not be recorded, but I recorded one of the practice runs, so enjoy. Developers usually like to write code. I mean, that's what we do all the time. Well, actually, that's what we're supposed to do most of the time, writing code. So we usually, as developers, tend to enjoy writing code. But there's a problem, and that the hard truth is that our job is not exactly about writing lines of code. We're not paid by the amount of keys we press in our mechanical keyboards, and thanks God that's not the way salaries are determined. But the thing is that we're not coders. We like to write code, but the goal is quite different. It's not about writing stuff, but it's about solving real problems, helping our customers, and even why not? I want to believe that it's also part of our responsibility to make the world a better place. But we still need to write code at the end of the day. That's what we do for most of our time, technically. So, what are you gonna do tomorrow when you get back to work? Well, chances are you're gonna do some of these activities. I hope you not all of them, but at least some, like boring or repetitive tasks, not always, but it happens, or working on tight deadlines. This is really common. That thing that they told you to do today, well, had to be done by yesterday, maybe. Or even if you're in luck, you're doing something new, but you feel you're going slower than expected, and it can be frustrating at sometimes. So what if I told you that there might be a tool? Let's imagine this kind of tool, if it exists, who knows? And this tool can help you solving the 3 problems I mentioned, but can even help you on even more aspects. And let's try to give it a name, and you might already guess it by probably the title of this session, that I'm talking about GitHub Copilot. So is it just another AI code assistant? There are many. Let me mention some, like Codarium, Amazon Q, or even the most hyped nowadays, that is Cursor. So is GitHub Copilot just exactly like the others? Well, there's a little tiny difference. And see, this was from GitHub Universe last year, the biggest GitHub conference worldwide. And the CEO announced that we all know GitHub has been founded on Git, but starting from that day, that is exactly 1 year ago, it will be refounded on Copilot, which is such a bold statement. But does that mean that GitHub Copilot is the best AI tool ever? Well, as always, I would say it depends, but it doesn't depend on benchmarks, at least not in my opinion. But the thing is, there are many tools similar, and what really matters is that you just pick the one that makes you feel more comfortable. The one makes you feel more productive. You can try some, and in my case, I tried GitHub Copilot and I'm really happy with it, so that's why it's my tool of choice. But I don't want to convince you with words, so here's a tiny demo I prepared for you. And well, I'm gonna do some live coding with generative AI. What could potentially go wrong? So wish me luck and let's get started. Let's begin from probably this is the most common feature of Copilot and all the other AI assistant coding tools. This is called Ghost Text in VS Code, and it's basically some great text that you can apply in your code just by pressing tab. Now, this was an entire function, and it tried to understand that after doing a couple of gets, I wanted to do an update. But most often, you're gonna find yourself in the situation where the tool just helps you complete the line you're writing. Now, here's a tiny trick before moving on to some more cool and advanced stuff. This trick is that if you try to generate some code and Copilot starts you suggesting something, it can be a single line or even more, you can press Ctrl-Enter, and this will open an entire side panel on the right that will generate up to 10 suggestions. There are usually 4 or 5. And with those suggestions, you basically have different variations of what the continuation made by Copilot could have been. For example, I can accept this one. But let's move on another cool feature that I would call it kind of a trick, but it totally makes sense. And the real power of these tools is that if they have context, they can better generate your code. In this case, this is a localization file just to show that works even without code, but with code is exactly the same. Let's say that I've got an entity that is called work item, and I want to localize its keys. Now, without giving Copilot any kind of context, it will try to understand something, in this case probably by the name work item, maybe by some cache that it has on my repository. But let's try to have some more context. In this case, I'm gonna grab this type here from this other file, but this could be literally from anywhere in your code base, or even, and that's where it shines the most, not inside your code. Let's say you've got a Jira ticket or a GitHub issue where there's a definition of something. You can just paste it there in the file. Even if it doesn't compile, it doesn't really matter. Copilot will now understand that maybe we're talking about that same work item, and with that, the suggestion will be exactly matching the fields you can find here. And then after generating the code or the scripts or the localization or whatever it is, you can just remove the thing you pasted, and there it is. You got super quick everything you wanted here for the work item. But let's now move on with something that is more related to another Copilot capability, that is Copilot chat. In this case, I've got an empty file called use_the_bounce, and whenever you have an empty file, GitHub will suggest you, if you press Command I, you can open Copilot chat and do something. Let's give it a try. In this case, I'm gonna simply tell it, do it. And with that, it knows it is in a file called use_the_bounce, and do it obviously means do something that is the use_the_bounce function. This is a pretty straightforward debouncing hook in React. Now, what else should we do when writing some, let's say, library or utility functions like this one? And for sure, the first thing you might do is to write some documentation. And with that, you can just type /doc, and Copilot will generate exactly the documentation of your function. In this case, it added a first description, details about parameters, and even an example, so that everyone using your function in the repository will have this nice tooltip. The second thing you probably want to do in this case is, well, if you paid attention, you notice that here I've got 4 commands: doc, explain, fix, and the last one that is generate unit test. Let's give it a try. With that, it will open again a side panel on the right, and it will try to generate your test. With that, I can click accept, and here I notice there are some errors, but that's kind of intended. Let's see what we can do. First of all, if I hit Command S and I can save the file, or I can just say use debounce.test.ts, and by just saving the file, you see that the first error disappears. This was from the import, but there's still something that seems broken. In this case, I don't know why it always tries to import from React hooks. This is just wrong, but the fix is easy. And the next error I want to tackle is that here it is using Jest, but in my project I wanted to use another tool, for example, Vitest. Well, in this case, I can just select all, type Command I again, and say use Vitest. With only this simple prompt, it will regenerate all the tests, this time getting rid of Jest and using Vitest as I requested. And just a couple of seconds, it is going down until the bottom. I can accept, and well, I can see that all the errors are gone. But if the tests are really working, the only way to see that is by typing npm run test, or I got a couple of shortcuts, and with that, yep, I see that the tests are green. Now, obviously, you shouldn't 100% trust this auto-generated test, but at least you didn't have to write a lot of boilerplate code. You just have this pre-written test, and you can go through them, validate that they're fine, refine them, add more. But this should have already give you quite a good advantage. And another thing you can do is, well, here it generated this use_the_bounce function, and it has a delay. But let's say I want to make this delay optional. Well, easy, you can just type something here, like a question mark, say that it has a default, and that's pretty much your value. Well, maybe without the question mark, and that's pretty much it. But let's say I don't like to have, let's call them magic numbers here inside the function. In this case, I can toggle something from the settings. I can reach it with chat.ex, that stands for experimental. You can also keep writing the entire word. And in this case, the setting I want to add is exactly this one, which is flagged as experimental. And basically it says that whenever there's something inside .github/Copilot instructions, those instructions will be added as a context in your request. In this case, if I go back here, I select everything and I say do it again, it will regenerate again the same file, but this time it's gonna use what I wrote here in my Copilot instruction. And in this specific case, you can see a couple of things changed. And the first one is that the delay is here as a global const. And the last one is, well, it generated a comment. Well, I can go inside that file to show you the content. And here, just to have some more context, it's inside the .github folder that is exactly the same where you might have your workflows, your pull request templates or issue templates or whatever. And here I've got this file, Copilot instruction, which in this specific case, I just told it to write this comment when generating some code, and also to never use magic numbers and use context on top of the file. And this basically means you can add here whatever good practice you want to enforce to every time Copilot generates something for you. But let's keep talking about context with a slightly different example. In this case, I'm on the browser and this is a project that is already running. Here I've got a table with some columns and some content, and here I'm on a different page, and this should be another table, but there are no columns defined. Let's see what we can do with Copilot. I can go to that file that should be here. So this is the empty column definition, and this is the file where the columns are used. Now, I can go here in columns and say, so this is it's supposed to be the work item table. And again, with Copilot chat, I can say, define the columns for the work item entity. And now I'm gonna tell Copilot, hey, you might not know what does it even mean to define the columns, what format I may want, what is the work item entity. Well, by clicking here, I can attach some context. In this case, I can select some files, even one or more than one, or if I'm feeling lucky, I can try the long shot and just say codebase. Let's use the entire codebase as a context, and with that, Copilot will try to read the files in my codebase and try to see if it can find a way to define the column exactly the way I want. In this case, let me accept. It didn't delete this one, but well, that's not too bad, I can do that. And with that, I see that pretty much it did kind of a good job by finding all the fields like title, description, and so on. I see here there's an error, but that's probably related to how the library works. In this case, I think I can simply select all the values here. I know there are gonna be some strings. And with that, if I go on the browser, well, there it is. It generated already all the columns and also decided, why not? Let's gonna try to use colors for the values high, medium, and low, which it wasn't even here. Copilot decided that this might have been a cool idea, and why not? I kind of like it. But that's not everything, because Copilot, like I mentioned, is not just a coding assistant. And to begin with, it is also in the console. Let's give it a try. I can type here double question mark, and this will trigger the GitHub Copilot in the CLI. Here I can ask for a generic shell command, for a gh command, that is the GitHub CLI, or a git command. Let's give it a try with a generic shell command. Something I never remember is that what is the latest version of an npm library? And that's simple command I never remember, but instead of Googling, I can just, well, ask Copilot, and from here I can type copy to the clipboard, Control-V or Command-V if you're on Mac. And here, well, I can ask stack react form to see if I get the version. Well, now this isn't AI, this is just the npm command, and I see that the result is 0.34. But I could have done pretty much the same, not through a terminal command, but through Copilot chat. In this case, I've got here the side panel with a chat where I can have, for example, I'm not gonna use here in this demo, but I can select if I want to use even the O1 preview, beta, and mini, or let's stick with GPT-4o. And here I can tag something, some kind of entity that it was called participant. No, it is called participant. It was called agent. It changed name a few times. But here, basically, I can get some helpers that know some specific domain, for example, Mongo, or even I can generate a regex, or even I can ask something GitHub related. And in this case, I can try a similar question. What is the latest release of TimeStack 4? And with that, it will try to ask the GitHub API what will be the latest version of this library. And with that, it says that, yep, latest version is 0.34, published a couple days ago. And if I click here, I'm redirected to the tags page on GitHub. But if you look closely, you're gonna notice that there are some Copilot icons. There's one here that is the chat about. Here I can chat about this repository. There's also another icon here that does exactly the same. And if you want a full experience of Copilot chat that is pretty much the same as ChatGPT, you can get this page that is exactly at github/Copilot, where you can chat with Copilot about everything that is related to GitHub or programming in general. But it's not the last thing I want to show you today, because in the last few minutes of this demo, I want to talk to you about Copilot Workspace. That is another tool in the Copilot toolset, and it recently added some features, and the one I like the most is this brainstorm button. With that, I'm basically brainstorming with an entity that knows deeply the repository, and we can have an insightful conversation about that. Here it suggested some question, and for example, I can ask, what are the key features of this library? And with that, Copilot Workspace will, by reading the code, try to generate a description of what this library is about. And this can be really useful when you want to evaluate some libraries and decide which one you want to import. And you can obviously also ask some questions like, what validation libraries, even if there are some typos, what validation libraries does it support? And with that, again, by scanning through the code, reading the documentation of the library, it will try to generate an answer. And yep, I see that there are 3 different adapters for Zod, Valibot, and Yup. And that's the answer I was looking for. Now, this tool does even more. It's not just a chat, and I can show you an example I already prepared. I started here with a simple chat like I was doing with that repository. But if I go here, well, this was the first question after brainstorming. I asked how our project started in the public profile. I chatted a little bit. I had a tiny conversation with Copilot chat. I did some more questions. Then it suggested me an idea. And after selecting the idea, it generated an entire plan. And the plan generated some code. And the code generated a pull request. And all of that just by chatting here or interacting with Copilot Workspace. But with that said, let's go back to the presentation. So here's the question. Have you seen some kind of Copilot captain stealing your job? Well, let's analyze what happened during this demo. I every time started with the prompt, the AI generated some code, and then I had to question, is it good? If it's not good, I can generate another prompt, for example, what I did with Jest and Vitest, and when I decided it is good, okay, I can accept and deploy. But the question is it good? How do I know that the generated code was good? Because, if you're not able to define if the output is good, then the only resort you have, the only tool you have is to just write another prompt and hope for the best. But this isn't really a reliable way of making sure that everything is good. So the bottom line is you either understand the output of Copilot of whatever AI tool you're gonna use, or you have to 100% trust the AI, which doesn't really seem ideal yet. So as we can see, human interaction is still definitely required. But this doesn't remove the question, for how long? Because see, Copilot is being updated almost weekly. Some of the features I showed you today were released, like the brainstorm button was released a month ago. And even the chat context and all the interaction, they literally change every day. But next week will be even bigger in terms of changes. And the reason is that You see the guy here in the picture? Next week, we'll be on the main stage in San Francisco for the GitHub Universe conference, announcing the latest innovation about Copilot. And well, obviously, I'm not talking about myself, but the GitHub CEO. I will probably be in the audience with Emanuele, but you get the idea. With that said, are you excited to discover the latest Copilot capabilities and how it will enhance our job? Because I am a lot. Thank you.